season of Six Flags Worlds of Adventure.
Take you right now to a story that we've been following for the last few minutes or so. We've just learned that part of Geauga Lake is going to close.
It is not uncommon for a theme park to shut down a roller coaster when it reaches the end of its service life, or a flat ride, or sometimes in the rare case, the entire park shuts down. The residents and lifelong fans of a well-known theme park in Northeast Ohio would have never expected that their local theme park that grew from a small family park on the lake would turn into the world's largest theme park seemingly overnight, and then one day without notice be shut down forever. The fans would get no less rides, no less visits, or photos of the park with their family. Let's take a look at the history of Geauga Lake Amusement Park, or Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, the world's largest theme park that's full of classic coasters, Six Flags, SeaWorld, and Cedar Fair. In this retrospective, we will be looking at the death of Geauga Lake, discussing the past, present, and future of the park, and the causes of the fall of this iconic theme park. Before we get started, I want to give a big welcome to our channel. This is our first video on the channel. We run a theme park podcast. That's where most of you probably know us from, Park Hoppers Radio. So you know what is expected from us. We'll be doing theme park history videos, documentary-style video essays, retrospectives, and much more on the theme park industry in long-form content. If you have any suggestions for a video that you would like to be featured, make sure you leave it down in the comments below, and let us know what your favorite memory from Geauga Lake is if you visited the park when it was operating. If you enjoy what you see here today, please consider giving us a like and subscribing, because that is the biggest way you can support our new and growing channel. Okay, with everything out of the way, let's discuss the fall of Geauga Lake, the world's former largest theme park. Taking it back on the early days of the amusement park, the area was settled by Sullivan Giles, and he built his log cabin there in 1817, and later a larger home on the north side of the lake. During the boom of the railroad, Giles saw some potential and made this area the Pond Station stop. As the years progressed and more people came, he made this area into a picnic ground, entertainment center, and dance halls. As the years went on, slowly the area became more popular, and it officially opened for families to picnic and swim in 1872, and you could even catch a steamboat going around the lake, towing a dance floor. A quote from a local paper said, "Without exception, this is the most charming place to spend a leisure day." Geauga Lake Amusement Park was officially established in 1887, and just 2 years later, the park added the first ride in the steam-powered carousel, a classic in almost every theme park in the country today. In 1925, the park added its first major addition in Big Dipper, the park's first wood roller coaster, standing as the world's tallest and fastest at a speed of 35 miles per hour. Fun fact, this was my first big boy roller coaster that I ever rode. This park means a ton to me. My family grew up there. They all worked there. We had season passes there, and that's why I'm covering this video. But this was my first big boy roller coaster, and I was so scared to ride this for the first time. This park was becoming a true destination park at the time, so they added a racetrack, an Olympic-sized pool, a bowling alley, and it just added to the whole allure that this was a true destination to go for locals and people beyond. As the years went on, the park did suffer from a bad tornado and a fire, and that destroyed the bowling alley, theater, and other buildings around it, causing to go to the park to a seasonal operation and the closure of the pool. In 1969, Funtime Incorporated purchased the parks. Funtime was owned by former managers of Cedar Point, so their focus on the park was rides and swimming. And then the amusement park grew in size, but a new neighbor across the lake also started to build. SeaWorld Ohio came to be, and they were friendly neighbors, complementing each other pretty well for the lifespan of these parks, respectively. Geauga Lake was the dry side that focused on rides and entertainment, and SeaWorld focused on the marine life, and it was just a true destination, focusing on thrills and marine life and education. Some notable additions to the park included the skyscraper that reached 21 stories up, which could get a great view of the park and across the lake to see SeaWorld Ohio. The Gold Rush log flume was added, and in 1976, the park got a small steel roller coaster in Wildcat. And 1 year later, after Wildcat was put into the park got the iconic double loop roller coaster manufactured by the now defunct Aerodynamics. The park was really bringing in customers at this time, so they added another roller coaster just 1 year later from the same manufacturer in Corkscrew. So this was the only park in the world to feature two looping roller coasters at one time. This park was absolutely thriving, so they continued to expand and add new attractions each and every year. Now they added the boardwalk shores that featured paddle boats that you could go around the lake, a new pool, and water slides, and the most popular attraction of its time, the only tsunami wave pool in the Midwest. And before the turn of the century, the park added Raging Wolf Bobs, which, fun fact, derailed its last day of operation, and expanded the Midway with 2 flat rides, the Mirage and Texas Twister. 5 years before the millennium hit, Premier Parks acquired Funtime, giving the park new ownership, and new ownership led to $9 million invested in new rides and attractions. Some of the notable attractions included Grizzly Run, which was an intimate water rapids ride, and Mine Eraser by the manufacturer Vekoma, which is a headbanger, and Mr. Hyde's Nasty Fall, which was an intimate first-gen freefall ride. And in the year before the millennium, we saw Premier Parks purchase Six Flags from Time Warner, and then Serial Thriller was added to the park, and Time Warp Americana, and this led to the rebranding of the park to Six Flags Ohio in 2000, when I was born. The turn of the century saw many changes and expansions come to this small park on the lake. In the Six Flags era, this saw many changes, and $40 million was invested into the park for expansion. If you adjusted those numbers for today's inflation, that would be $71 million, which on average, a theme park is spending around $5 to $10 million each year for expansions. When a park adds something new today, usually a new roller coaster from the manufacturer, let's say B&M, would cost $15 to $20 million, but most smaller parks are not adding million-dollar rides to their parks every year. So this was a massive increase to the park for expansion. And that slowly led to the downfall of this park, but we'll get into that later when I talk about the 3 reasons why this park failed. That $40 million included a big variety of rides that totaled 20 new rides with 4 roller coasters. In today's day and age, I cannot think of a park adding this many rides and roller coasters in 1 year unless they're opening up a new theme park, but usually they're starting small. So this was a massive increase, and let's get into the headliner of that year. This ride is still operating. It is known as Dominator, or in the time it was Batman Night Flight, manufactured by Bolliger and Mabillard, or B&M for short. This still operates as one of the best roller coasters today in the Florida's category, but that is now at Kings Dominion in Doswell, Virginia. Other attractions that year included were a junior roller coaster named Roadrunner Express and the CCI Woody and Villain. And rounding out the coasters was the Intimate Impulse and Superman Ultimate Escape. In addition to the roller coasters, there was a shoot-to-shoot ride in Shipwreck Falls and a new wave pool as the old one got raised and replaced by the new Looney Tunes area known as Looney Tunes Boomtown. We didn't hear much news from across the lake at SeaWorld, Ohio, but during that time, the Busch Entertainment that owned SeaWorld and the parks around the country made the decision that going forward their parks should have roller coasters. Including with roller coasters, they thought roller coasters, flat rides, and water rides would complement the marine part of their parks and slowly started to de-emphasize the educational aspects of the park. All the SeaWorld parks, SeaWorld San Diego, San Antonio, and Orlando started that process of getting these roller coasters and flat rides in the park. As for the SeaWorld Park in Ohio, this park suffered from height restrictions, and with being across the lake, Busch made the offer to purchase Six Flags, but they declined, and they actually made a counteroffer to buy SeaWorld Orlando for $110 million. They accepted in that year, and they bought the park for $110 million in cash. Just imagine holding $110 million in cash for a second. With this buying out, this merged the 2 complexes that combined for 700 acres, being the world's largest theme park still to this date almost, even beating parks such as Animal Kingdom and other Disney parks. In this time, my aunt was actually in charge of the marketing at the park, and they came up with the slogan 3 parks for the price of 1, or 3 in 1, and changed the name to Six Flags Worlds of Adventure. Interestingly, in 2001, this is very interesting because some people may not know this, that this park actually planned to build a hypercoaster on the SeaWorld side, but facing those height restrictions and problems with the city of Aurora, they canceled those plans. Truly would have been interesting to see a hyper at this park. With so many additions to the park, this was rapidly increasing tourism to the area, and the park saw a peak of 3 million visitors in 2001, but that would be short-lived. More on that soon. 2002 saw the replacement of Shamu, which was replaced by Shuka that came from France. The Wild Rides or Dry Park of the original site continued to expand with the now defunct X-Flight manufactured by Vekoma. I'll talk about the fate of the roller coasters later and if they're still operating and which park they're at so you can go ride them to this day. My stepdad actually operated X-Flight for 1 year during a summer job. And he said, quote, the best part of his day was seeing riders come back in and wanting to go again on the rides because some of them were scared and they came back and they just wanted to keep repeating. So he said it was a joy to see people loving the roller coaster. From 2001 to 2004, they saw a decrease in attendance from the parks, and Six Flags was growing, but they were facing financial difficulties with a high debt from the many additions from across the chain. The company considered selling the park, but during that time, Cedar Fair, the owner of Cedar Point and Kings Island, bought the park for $185 million. This park went under massive changes again just 4 short years later as the park was acquired by Cedar Fair. This saw the debranding of the park, and the park went back to the Geauga Lake name, and all the copyright and trademark things, Looney Tunes and DC Comics, were removed from the rides, roller coasters, and attractions. The kids area of Looney Tunes Boomtown was renamed to KidWorks. The Hurricane Harbor Water Park was also renamed to Hurricane Hannah's Water Park. Cedar Fair definitely had an agenda when buying this park in 2004, so this saw the marine life portion of the park was closed and demolished, and those animals were relocated to other Six Flags parks. Many of the roller coasters and rides saw name changes, including Batman Night Flight, lost the Batman theming, and opened up in 2004 under the new name Dominator, which still operates to this day. Roadrunner Express was renamed to Beaverland Mine Ride, Superman Ultimate Flight was renamed Steel Venom, and Serial Thriller was renamed Thunderhawk, which still operates to this day as the same name. Slowly but surely, the park was unraveling, but they invested $26 million in the Wild Water Kingdom portion of the park because they saw the most attendance coming from the water park, so they invested $26 million there on the former site of SeaWorld, Ohio. Yet again, the park was renamed to Geauga Lake in Wild Water Kingdom, packaging the two in one. At the time, many have not seen the downfall of the park, but it was slowly coming to an end. They closed Mr. Hyde's Nasty Fall and used those parts for Demon Drop at Cedar Point, which is now a Dorney Park today. Cedar Fair saw people coming into the park for the water park, but not the dry side of the park, so they continued to expand Wild Water Kingdom. So this got Tidal Wave Bay, and Hurricane Hannah's area was eventually shut down, leaving Wild Water Kingdom as the only water park. Behind the scenes, it was not so pretty. There were people getting laid off, whole areas were being cut, such as marketing, and so much more. But that was behind the scenes, and the public did not see the decline until 2007. Early signs indicated this as the season was scaled back, eliminating the spring and fall weekend for operations, and they only operated between Memorial Day and Labor Day, with one last weekend in mid-September. Right before 2007 hit, many rides were removed. X-Flight, the roller coaster, was removed, as well as Steel Venom, and X-Flight was moved to Kings Island down south in Cincinnati. And before 2007 hit, this ride was removed to Kings Island, like I said, and it opened up as Firehawk in 2007. Steel Venom was relocated to Dorney Park, and it operated for 2008 as Voodoo, and then 2009 it was renamed Possessed, which is still operating today. People inside the theme park industry speculated that this park would eventually come to a close after they relocated two of the major roller coasters in X-Flight and Steel Venom prior to the 2007 season. Like I said before, after they invested the $40 million into the park in 2001, they saw a steady increase of visitors, but after 2001, they saw a steady decline of visitors, going from 2.7 million all the way to 700,000, which is a huge decrease in attendance. In retrospective, looking back at it, when the park eventually did close, they quoted this area as the most difficult market. And in 2007, we got this news at the end of the season.
Take you right now to a story that we've been following for the last few minutes or so. We've just learned that part of Geauga Lake is going to close, and we have on the telephone right now Stacy Frohl, who's a spokeswoman for the Cedar Fair company. Cedar Fair owns Geauga Lake. Stacy, are you there?
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you for being with us. What can you tell us now about the decision regarding Geauga Lake?
Basically, our board of directors made the decision yesterday afternoon that the market demand simply isn't there to support the park as it's currently structured. The decision was made to operate the park exclusively as the water.
And yes, that's how it ended. The last day of operation 2007 saw the end of Geauga Lake, the regular side of the park, the dry side. There was no warning, there was no last visits, no last rides or celebrations. The park was just closed without warning, and this left a lot of locals upset and people without jobs. Only the water park would be open quoting that this would be the area where they saw the most attendance in the water park in Geauga Lake's Wildwater Kingdom. Many of the rides were removed, and let's go through a list of where the rides were removed and located, and if you can ride them till this day. In 2007, X-Flight was relocated to Kings Island as Firehawk, and it operated till 2018, and then 2020 saw the replacement for it in Orion, the B&M Giga. The Villain was demolished and sold to Cleveland Scrap for $2,500. Wild Mouse was relocated in 1972 to Chippewa Lake Park, closed down in 1978 along with the park, and was eventually taken down in the spring of 2013. Thunderhawk was relocated to Michigan's Adventure, where you can still ride it to this day. Steel Venom was relocated to Dorney Park and now operates as Possessed, and you can ride it to this day. Raging Wolf Bob's, the wood coaster that did derail its last day of operation, was sold for $2,500 at an auction. 2 of the PTC cars were actually acquired by the Amusement Preservation Museum, and they've been fully restored to this day, and that was in 2017. And a lot of the parts were donated to Geauga Lake's Historical Society. Headspin was relocated to Carowinds and now operates as the Flying Cobras. Double Loop, one of the best rides of the park, was sold to Cleveland Scrap for $25,000. Dominator now operates today at King's Dominion, and you can ride it as the same name in Dominator. The Beaverland Mine Ride was sold to a park in France, which I'm not even going to attempt the name of. And Big Dipper, the last roller coaster to go, was listed for auction on eBay in 2010, but didn't receive any bids. Then it was eventually demolished in 2016 as the last ride that was standing, and it was very sad to see. A quick little personal story. I remember driving by this park in 2015 when I first got my first car and started to drive. It was very nostalgic seeing the first big roller coaster that I rode just standing there and abandoned, and I always had an itch for abandoned things, but a lot of people were getting arrested exploring this abandoned park, so I didn't want to try to go in, but it was very sad. And as the years went on, I actually started driving for FedEx, and my route was actually in the old area where Geauga Lake was and the houses surrounding it, so I had to see that and that reminder every single day. It was very sad. Later in the video, we'll talk about the future of the park and what the plans are from the city for this park. Let's get into the 3 reasons why this park failed, I think. The first reason why I think this park failed was the location. It just couldn't sustain the park. I lived in Ohio my entire life before recently moving, and like I said, I was a delivery driver in Aurora near the old park. And looking back, 2001, the population was less than 15,000 people. The city attempted to widen the roads, add new signs, directions, and a lot of city projects were failed or either canceled, and the small town Ohio was just not fit for the huge market this park wanted to bring in. If you took a trip there from out of town, your trip would consist of country roads, farms, and getting into Aurora was just flooded and overrun when the park was in the peak season of 2000 to 2004. No local infrastructure was built to help the crowds, and there was no hotels, maybe some small motels, but no big hotels even in the area to this day. And not to mention, the park wasn't even near a main interstate to drive on. This ginormous park that invested $40 million was being overrun by people that weren't locals, and a lot of the locals did not like that either, but that's a conversation for another time. With $40 million invested in the park, the second reason why I think it failed was it was just very undervalued. The admission was $38, and when you left the park, they offered you to upgrade the pass for an extra $10 in 2001. For $48, you could go to this park unlimited for the rest of the year, and having prices like this, the passes flooded the parks with less money coming back for the investments. This all wrapped up together with the flooded parks in the summer like a babysitting service, which the current president of Six Flags in 2023 says he wants to eliminate. If you would have outpriced a little bit of that, it could have eliminated some of the problems like Salim Basul is trying to do now with increasing the prices, pushing out the kids for the summer, but making it more accessible for adults. But a lot of loyal visitors for the years just didn't come back because the park was continually being overflooded and the ride and the waits were just atrocious. And I think one of the biggest reasons why, and the third reason, is too much expansion at the current time. When talking about this, bigger doesn't always mean better, and amidst the coaster wars, Geauga Lake was right in the middle of this. Just imagine if a park near you like Knoebels or Adventureland or a smaller park like this added 4 new roller coasters towering over the park and the former rides. I guarantee your perception of the park would change, the history of the park and local reception by longtime locals would change as more and more people are coming into the parks, and your small family park turn into this massive corporation that now operated as the world's largest theme park, which was too much change, too much expansion at one time. All this culminated together with the location was not good. $40 million investments were not coming back because the admission price was so low, and there was just too much expansion at one time, and they didn't let the park organically grow like some of these parks you're seeing today, like Cedar Point, Kings Island, and others in the area. They hyperinflated this park, did not grow naturally, and that eventually led to the downfall, and Six Flags and Cedar Fair did play a role in this. I know, looking back at this as a retrospective, that Cedar Fair definitely had an agenda when buying this park in 2004, with expanding the water park and then eventually closing Wild Water Kingdom in 2007, or 2016. Also, a side note would be the competition with Cedar Point and Kings Island, as they wanted to diversify this. They wanted people either going south or north. They didn't want it going in the middle, and they made more trips for that up to Cedar Point, like I said, Kings Island. I hear many people say in forums that Six Flags caused the entire downfall of the park, which is definitely not true. Like I said, Cedar Fair, Six Flags, and everybody played a role in the downfall of this park. Like I said, in 2016, Wild Water Kingdom was eventually closed down, and I had a season pass there for like 8 years, and I loved going there as the summers. They had great water rides, and my biggest memory I remember was just standing on top of the toilet bowl and just staring out over to Geauga Lake right before they took out Big Dipper, and just looking at the former park that my family grew up on, they worked at, and I grew up as a child going on my first roller coasters, flat rides, water rides, and everything. This is definitely one of the most tragic stories in all of theme park history, and that's why I wanted to cover it first, because the city meant a lot to me, the park meant a lot to me, and it just went away overnight. And it was definitely a big hit to locals as they attempted to revamp the park, but let's take a look at today, what they're doing with the park, and if there's any development on the land. And for 2023, the biggest update I can give you is that some of the area, 377 acres, were bought in 2020 to be redeveloped as the Geauga Lake District. Along with that, the portion of that is bought by the city to provide beach access and an open public park for the former site of Geauga Lake and SeaWorld, respectively. The mayor back in June of this year presented that idea where they would buy the property from the industrial commercial properties for $4.5 million, and then they would use this, and they said this is a legacy purchase for the people of Aurora. This area would be reopened as the Aurora Park at Geauga Lake. And on this area, the mayor said it's going to include a pool and non-motorized boating on the lake. It's very sad to see this park go, but eventually something had to replace it. It couldn't sit there abandoned just forever. So as of today, I did see this park getting razed and demolished as I drove by it for my last ride over by Geauga Lake. That is the history of the world's former largest theme park, Geauga Lake, the downfall, and the reasons why I think this park eventually failed. It's sad to see it go, and it's one of the most iconic theme parks of all time, and it's definitely a lot to learn from in history for current theme parks today. Make sure you comment down below your favorite memory at the former Geauga Lake, the world's largest theme park, and send this to a friend that they have to see this video of Geauga Lake. And if you want to see other videos featured on this channel, make sure you comment those ideas down below. And that was the history of the world's former largest theme park, Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, or formerly known as Geauga Lake.